I come to the floor to talk about the possibility of a government shutdown and to say that such an alternative will be very hurtful for the people of this country. I was here when the government was shut down before by another Republican speaker, and I can tell you that my small business people, for example, who count on tourism around Yosemite National Park, still remember the sting of losing over $200 million because people had to cancel their trips. And that's one example. I know that Superfund site cleanups were halted in their tracks. We had issues at the border. We had a whole series of problems. And it seems to me it is a reckless way to go. But it also seems to me that the House Republicans want us to have a government shutdown. Why would I say that? I say that because Republicans gave the Speaker of the House an ovation when he informed them to begin preparing for a possible shutdown. An ovation. I would hope we would reserve our ovations for our leaders when they tell us that because of our work in funding the National Institutes of Health, we now have a cure for cancer. I'd like to have an ovation about that. I'd like to have an ovation for our firefighters and our first responders who are brave every single day of the year. I'd like to have an ovation for them. I don't think having an ovation because we might have a government shutdown is appropriate. But you know what? It was an honest response. That's what they want. And you have to ask yourselves, why? Why do they want this? Because they want to cut $100 billion from the president's budget when Democrats have already agreed to go and meet them with $73 billion in cuts? Madam President, there are three parties to these negotiations: the President, who is a Democrat, the Senate, which is Democratic, and the House, which is Republican. Since when does 1/3 represent a majority? Since when is 1/3 allowed to say my way or the highway? Well, apparently that's what they're doing. Well, I'm here to say it has now been 35 days since the Senate passed S-388. What is S-388? Senate Bill 388 says, if there is a shutdown, members of Congress and the President will not receive their pay. Why do I think this is important? Because most people don't know that although our staffs won't get paid, although many federal employees will not get paid, members of Congress have a special protection built in because we're paid under a statute, and so is the President. And so, 35 days ago, we sent over to the House a very simple bill. It says if there's a shutdown, basically that means failure on our part to keep the government going. What could be more basic than that? We shouldn't get paid, and we shouldn't get paid retroactively. Our colleagues over there have taken no action. Now, if you ask them, they'll say, oh, yes, we did. We put that in another bill and passed it. Well, you know what the other bill is? The other bill is an illegal bill. The other bill would make our founders roll over in their graves. This is what the bill they embedded no budget, no pay in. Follow me. And I especially hope the young people listening to this debate will follow me, because you've learned how a bill becomes a law. It goes through a committee, usually, doesn't have to. It goes to one house, they pass it, the other house passes it, so you get the House and the Senate, and then it goes to the president. He either signs it or vetoes it. If he signs it, it's law. If it's vetoed, 2/3 can override him. Guess what? They put no budget, no pay into a bill that says the following: if the Senate has not acted by a date certain on H.R. 1, this horrible bill that I just talked to you about, that bill will have been deemed to be the law. Now it's a new deal. We deem. So in other words, I have 20 bills that I've introduced. Today, I deem them law. I have some great bills. One is a Violence Against Children Act, very, very important. Another would help, many of my transportation folks. I deem them all law. How is that legal? It's illegal. So they're saying if we don't act on H.R. 1 again, it's deemed the law. It's ridiculous. It doesn't even pass the smell test, the laugh test, and they've embedded in it no budget, no pay. So big surprise, we're not going to pass it over here in that form. So I'm saying that this is a maneuver and a little dance by Speaker Boehner and Eric Cantor, who is the leader over there, to make it look like they're not for them getting their pay, but to do nothing about it. So let me tell you what I've done. I've written a letter, and it has many colleagues on it. I will read the letter. And we're sending it by end of business tonight. Dear Speaker Boehner, we write to request a meeting with you to discuss House passage of S388, legislation to prohibit members of Congress and President from receiving any pay during a government shutdown. Over a month ago, over 1 month has passed since the Senate unanimously passed our bill. Despite written requests for immediate House consideration, you have failed to schedule a vote on standalone legislation that would treat members of Congress and the President no differently from other federal employees during a shutdown. Our bill is simple. If we cannot do our work and keep the government functioning, we should not receive a paycheck. If we can't compromise and meet each other halfway, then we should not get paid. As we noted in a previous letter, while appearing on the CNN program Crossfire in 1995, Mr. Boehner offered his support for a bill identical to S388, so it's unclear why he has not scheduled a vote on standalone legislation. Embedding no budget, no pay in a bill that has no chance of passage isn't fooling anybody. We request a meeting with Speaker Boehner as soon as possible, whether in person or via conference call, to discuss how we can work together to immediately send this legislation to the President. So here's a bill that passed here without a dissenting vote. So it's basically 100 to nothing. In a time when we can't agree on the color of that wall, we agreed to pass this no budget, no pay legislation. But Speaker Boehner, who got a standing ovation, maybe it was a sitting ovation, it didn't say standing ovation, but he got an ovation for talking about preparing for a shutdown, has not done one thing to make sure that his members and he do not get paid in case of a shutdown. I think it's appalling, it's embarrassing. I just am stunned. And the reason I am pressing this, Madam President, is I believe that people should be treated equally. I believe that if they are cavalierly applauding and giving an ovation to Speaker Boehner when he just talks about planning for a shutdown, I believe they want a shutdown. And they have no skin in the game. They pay no price. They get paid.